Cheryl Cunningham is the founder and CEO of Huro AI. Huro AI is one of the top 20 AGI leaders and an innovative voice in the emerging AI technology wave. So you're in the right place if you want to find out what is going on in this ever-changing, constantly moving world. Welcome to the podcast, Cheryl.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil.
This is exciting, isn't it? I mean, whichever way you look, wherever you look, whoever you speak to, there's change afoot constantly. How do you manage in a business like this?
That's a great question. I mean, you have to really stay focused and true to your mission and your goal. Lucky for us, we are not a one-trick pony. So for companies that are, I don't know how they deal with OpenAI and the likes coming out with a new feature every other day. It's a tough industry right now. It's probably one of the most exciting, but one of the most challenging for entrepreneurs out there.
The opportunities are just boundless, aren't they? I mean, it's almost like it's an unrestricted Wild West, really, in lots of ways, because there's almost no limit to the creative ideas as a user of the technology that is actually possible. Whereas often in sort of bygone times, it's been okay. Well, when the technology catches up with my amazing idea, or I got this great sort of side hustle and I want to expand it, but the tech isn't really there for me yet. I mean, it's now completely the opposite way around, isn't it? It's just trying to kind of keep up with the opportunity. How do you kind of guide and advise people to kind of cut through all this noise and the chaos?
It's definitely the gold rush right now, in which, any way you look, there's a frontier technology that is developing. So how do you compete with all these companies that are moving at exceedingly fast pace when you yourself are a startup with limited resources? I think lucky for most of us, there was a statistic that came out this morning, I believe I saw, that I think 25% of YC companies are using AI to code. So I think obviously, the tools that are out there for us today are boundless to help us, really exceed this or get ahead of the curve, if you will. But you can only get ahead of the curve only so far nowadays, it seems, before tomorrow you wake up to the news that your business is no longer relevant. Which is a scary thing for startups. So I think, for us, what we have found is, and lucky for us, by the way, I don't know if so many companies are as lucky as we are. We stumbled upon a way in which we can insert our technology at the top of the food chain, so that we become, if you imagine the pick and axles, or the platform in which we can allow all these new frontier technologies to sort of blossom off of. So we're lucky in that way, that's the direction that we're headed. But for the companies that are building the end user type, one trick ponies, I call it, they've really got to think about how could they potentially get into that same sort of high level ability to distribute their technology to the mass market, in a way where I think the let's let me kind of rephrase it. I think distribution method is really going to be the key play in the next at least year or so.
And there's almost like a little crystal ball moment there from you, Cheryl, because it kind of, it's hard to predict this stuff though, isn't it? Because I know I've always kind of invested my thinking and my attention towards voice activation, voice enablement. Obviously, we're here on a podcast, which is voice. I think a lot of people are kind of tussling with, okay, if I'm going to invest in stuff, and it isn't necessarily, a financial investment, it can be an investment of resources and attention in your people, in pointing them in a certain direction. And if you go all in, which is what a lot of the media is telling us we have to do now, if you back the wrong horse, the amount of backtracking you have to do is just crazy, isn't it? I mean, where do
Yeah.
we kind of start to make those sorts of judgments? Because unless you're in an organization like Huro AI, which of course is that one of these sort of central hubs, you could almost call it there, if we're looking for specialist kind of AI or specialist tech to enable a particular thing within our business, it's almost like we have to jump into that. And then there's maybe another one to do something else and another one to do something else. It's difficult, this, isn't it?
Exactly. I think a lot of companies are realizing that they cannot depend on just their own development team. They have to move quickly by assimilating, or let's just say collaborating with other companies. I think the name of the game in the future is collaboration. Gone are the days in which, if you are a single company, you depend on your own development team to forge ahead. Now, if you're Microsoft, that's a different story, and they do it by acquisitions, right? And they do that very quickly on a massive global scale. As startups, I think that we have to head in that direction as well. And as startups, you don't have the sort of financial resources. So you really got to group together with other startups and say, how do we start benefiting each other and forming sort of almost like a consortium, if you will. So I think the consortiums of the future, these collaboration groups, are going to be the winners in the future. You almost have to share in the pot of gold in order to succeed and forge ahead. So, I think the key here is to be open to these collaborations, really start thinking about how do you tap on those doors that of other startups that are of equal traction as you or equal speed as you. Obviously not all startups will win, so you'll want to find backup plans as well if that doesn't work out, because, startups is such a treacherous journey that, 90% of us fail, right? So even then, as a startup, when you do collaborate, you're also making that big bet as well, just like investors are. So, the question really is, how do you then become, as a startup founder looking for other collaborators, how do you start becoming that, investor? How do you start, looking at other companies from a investment perspective? Because that's what you're also investing, is your own time, energy, and brand to position yourself in collaboration with this other company.
That's really interesting. I'm curious then, Cheryl, in terms of what leads here. Is it the potential solution, or is this being led by the tech? So when you go into a collaboration like that, and maybe you've got two or three like-minded organizations or sort of co-founders, and you're coming together in that first meeting, and you're looking to kind of explore the opportunity. And obviously we know these opportunities potentially are very lucrative and very exciting. Is it led, in your experience, from, we have this big dream of what this thing is going to potentially look like, or the solution that we can actually focus on? Or is it led by, look, if we bolt this widget with this widget and put it on this platform, this is going to enable this? In other words, kind of tech driven. Well, where do you see it beginning? I'm just curious as a marketer, because there's two different ways you can cut this, aren't there?
Gosh, I think it's going to have to be for every company. You really have to take a look at your mission and vision. I think is the first step. If the companies align in this, vision of the future, and by the way, visions of the future nowadays is all prediction as to, we can throw a dart and have 1,000 different scenarios in which our future could work out. So I think it's very important in which we have to align first on our what that vision is. Are you pro, for example, humanity leaning on AI technology or quantum technology, or the combination of which, in order to then allow humans to lead a more carefree, enlightened life, if you will? Or are you all about replacing, humans altogether? And, who cares about whether they are able to survive or not? I think there's almost three different party lines, if you will, nowadays, it seems. People who feel there's a 50-50, we can coexist. There's people who think, who cares about humans, even though they themselves are, they're much more about the capitalistic side of things, right? And then there's the other side, which I mentioned, is, hey, we can basically lean on AI to remove ourselves from this everyday rut, this 8 to 5, trying to put food on the table. Can we leverage AI to generate revenue for us so that we can then have a better life ourselves? So I feel like there's three, major groups right now. So which do you belong to? I think number one. And then followed by, what is it you need from other companies that would put you ahead of the game by at least the next 2 years minimum? Otherwise, why do it?
I love that fact that we're starting with human. I mean, this is actually a really interesting conversation already, because I think a lot of people talking about this is all about the tech. It's like, oh no, humans, we'll add them in at the end and see what the impact might be. But I love this as a really refreshing approach from you, Cheryl, because obviously, and I want to get deep into what Huro AI is doing and what it stands for and everything in just a moment for those who aren't aware of it. But it's just really interesting that this is almost a human-centric approach, even though the tech is incredible and the opportunities there, and a lot of people could get swept along by the hype. You're starting from a very human sort of centric position at the beginning. And I think that's probably a really kind of pragmatic way of doing it, because who knows? And as you say, the playbook isn't written yet. I'm paraphrasing you, but it's kind of what you're saying is that nobody actually, no matter what they claim, knows how this is going to play out. So what better way of starting than with human, and then seeing where there might be a blend of technologies, as you say, in collaboration, that can enable us to do things better, more efficiently, more effectively. That feels a good way of doing it, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Neil. And I beg to defer on us not really knowing where we want to end up. Because at the end of the day, what we do know, bottom line, is that we want to end up alive and well. As humans, we want to be at the end of that line. We want to still be around to enjoy life at that time. So I think if you work backwards, if you reverse engineer that, right? Um, how do we then forge forward where humans end up around and happy at the end of this line? So for us, that was a very clear sort of, a method in which we found our voice and our brand and our mission and our vision. Everything really was centered around, how do humans become happier than we are today? So yeah, that's what our company is founded on.
That's nice. And it kind of feels, I guess, for people listening to this or watching it, that feels safe. It feels like there's less fear, because there is a lot of fear around this. And I think that fear of the unknown for many people, even if they're, super experienced in business or very wise and mature and stuff, the unknown can often be quite unsettling for some people. For some, it's obviously a hugely exciting ride, and it's almost like it doesn't matter where the destination is, I'm just on this for the ride. But I think for most of us, there is that unsettling. I really don't know how this is going to play out. So the fact that you're going into this with a very human-centric, well-being position, I guess you could say, I think is going to give a lot of people a lot of confidence. This is the right thing to be doing and focusing on. Can we go a bit deeper then into the whole Huro AI strategy,
Yeah.
mission, vision? Kind of tell me more.
So, just I gave you a little bit of an insight as to what we imagined the vision to be. And it all began because, 25 years ago, I started my journey as an entrepreneur. And in this 25 years, I've gone through a lot as an entrepreneur. The sacrifices, personal, emotional, mental, physical, that I've had to make, is a lot. And so in looking around me, during COVID actually, I started imagining this world where, entrepreneurial journeys could be a lot easier. And us entrepreneurs are always building for others. So I started asking my question, starting asking myself a question as to why can't we build something for us as entrepreneurs to make our lives easier? It's sort of like, in the airplane, right? They tell you if the mask drops, the first person that you want to save is yourself so you could save others. So it's the same sort of mentality. It's, if we could create a digital twin that could enable us to be entrepreneurs or sorry, more successful, healthier, more, efficient, productive entrepreneurs, then we can certainly help others in a much bigger way. So that's sort of the mentality there. And we had to begin from somewhere, and that somewhere for us started with language. Because we realized that if we wanted to help entrepreneurs around the globe, we really have to enable them to be able to communicate with everyone across the globe, whether it's finding investors or communicating with, new teammates that you want to bring on and share this grand vision and mission with them. You have to be able to understand each other. And because most of the companies are globalized nowadays, language is really at the crux of it all.
Digital twin, interesting word or interesting phrase there. I think a number of us obviously have heard this. How does that play out within Huro then? Because I'd like to kind of know your perspective on that phrase, because again, that is something I think people are curious about, maybe a little nervous about. Digital twin.
So, a little sort of teaser, if you will, that is coming out of the news today, just in the last couple of days, is a company called Manus, Manus. If you haven't looked at it already, they're calling themselves the general agent, right? So you've had so far a lot of agents that are very specific. They do a specific task. And now, Manus has come out with this general agent in which, you could dream up basically almost anything that you'd need to get done. And their agent would then go ahead and do that task for you autonomously. So Huro AI is very much based on that simple foundation as well, but we have actually taken it a few steps further. Now, one of the things that we are taking a step further is the ability to have human cognition. Human cognition is extremely important in when you build this agent that is going to execute tasks for you. Now, you don't want to execute the task in a way that is generalized, right? Because you and I are very different, right, Neil? The way that we approach challenges or solutions are very different from each other. Our life experiences, and therefore our output is very different from each other. That's what makes us so unique, and our company so different in the results that we produce. So, in keeping that sort of uniqueness about our own outputs, this is where our IP begins. It's really extracting who you are, Neil, as a person, your background, your experiences, how you actually solve problems, who you even like to communicate with, or who you like to collaborate with. These are all little nuances that are not being captured. So in taking that a step further, this general agent, right? Imagine one that is hyper personalized to you. And then in taking that even a step further, we've realized that in order for every single one of us to benefit off of this sort of technology, it has to be democratized. And what that means is, I think, having, for example, Claude to code for you is fantastic. It's a fantastic tool. But who can use this? I can tell you, grandma's not going to be using it. The waiter in the restaurant is not going to be using it either. So how do we get this sort of technology in a way that can be distributed? And this is back to the beginning of the conversation that we've had on this podcast, is how do you distribute this technology in a way where it is truly democratized and possible to get it in the hands of every single person on the planet? So that's how we've taken it a step further, and our distribution method is quite unique. It's through connectivity.
Tell me more. Connectivity. That kind of has many interpretations, doesn't it? I want to make sure I'm clear here. How much more can you tell us?
I've kind of alluded it in other areas as well, but basically the idea here is if you can imagine a future where you'd no longer need apps, right? Who likes apps anyway? We've got a million of them. And to open up every single app, which is what Manus is taking care of now. It's now able to, for example, tap into all the different tools and skills that you may need. OpenAI is now approaching that as well, in which they're beginning to retire apps, if you will, because in a way, or let's just say, it's beginning to help you get to the point where you as a user no longer need to activate an app or open up the app. It can do it on your behalf. So now let's take that a step further and say, if we get rid of apps completely and we just have skills and tools in the future, and if you were able to distribute this agent, this boss agent, we call her Gabby. And Gabby is a boss agent. If we were able to distribute this boss agent to every single person on the planet through connectivity, through Wi-Fi, through your satellite signal, for example, where she is kind of like, Iron Man's Jarvis, if you will, where she can travel with you from device to device, and she's able to function with just voice activation. You're able to speak with her without touching any apps. She's able to access the skills and tools that you need, and that's it. No apps. So, we envision this future of an app-free, very easy to use, fully democratized, truly democratized AI.
This is getting really interesting, isn't it? Because again, this is, I guess, if we're looking back, you said around COVID sort of time, there were some wake up calls for you and, moments where you just had that real clarity over what is potentially going to be possible very, very soon. And here we are, literally a blink of the eye later. And because this has moved so fast. When, I guess, is the question, is this going to become, as you say, democratized and mainstream? When are we all going to be using this kind of thing, would you imagine?
I think within 2 years. I know our product timeline, and we have been sort of clandestine about it, if you will. We've been kind of quiet about it. We are still really taking a look at the landscape and sort of using this, influx of all these companies that are showing us, their cards, if you will. And, we're kind of sitting back and waiting for the right moment. And of course, we're still developing our technology as well. But as we, see this landscape of tools and, ideas that's coming on the market today, we are definitely using that to our advantage. So I think in this era, being the first to market is not actually necessarily the best, as you can see from the ChatGPT instance right there. Coming out with it, and we thank them. We thank them for making this a much easier journey. But at the end of the day, it's once again, it's all about who can unify all these companies together, and bring this to market to every single person on the planet. I think that's the horse that people should be betting on.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you kind of think about this as a use case in maybe a small to medium-sized business where they think, at the moment we can't really compete with the big guys. There's this big corporate with very deep pockets, and they have the resources, they've got the innovation teams, the new product development group, and this, that, and the other. But we want to compete with them, but we have to stay in our lane and we have to do things small scale because we simply don't have the resources. This opens up absolute fair competition, doesn't it, from a business sense? Because if you can have a Gabby who is there with the tools, the experience, the skills, the knowledge, that connectivity, if you like, to be omnipresent, able to solve every possible potential challenge, that to use your phrase, you could reverse engineer to being at least one or two steps ahead of the leaders in your marketplace. Well, isn't that interesting? Because Gabby can be there actually guiding you strategically to get to anywhere you want to be as a business. Am I kind of following the logic here, succinctly? Because it just feels that this is opening up really fair competition for those who've got the really good ideas and the strategic thinking in every single sector. That's how I'm reading what you're saying, Cheryl.
Exactly, Neil. You hit the nail on the head there. Our idea is not to be that single skill or that single agent, if you will. Our idea here is to provide all these developers, all these companies, the platform. And we build that foundational model, that foundational platform in which you then build your blocks off of. The pick and axle, right? The what I was referring to earlier. How do you create a world in which all these companies can have equal access to the world? And so if we can build that platform in which we can give equal access to everybody, all developers, all startups, all, even large corporations, and they're able to come into this as a sort of, global marketplace, and take on any tool or purchase any tool, any skill for Gabby. You can solve anything in the world for anybody in any industry, in any sector. So you're right on it, Neil.
Which is great. I mean, as a marketer, that just sounds like, wow, the winners are going to be even bigger winners. The people who maybe are struggling right now get a chance in the game. But I guess the alternative angle here, and the kind of the flip side of this is, doesn't this just mean we're going to see everything become vanilla? Because if everybody has the same level of potential to get to this kind of high, level of success, we're all going to be winning, which obviously is not possible. It's just capitalism just doesn't work like that. So how is that going to play? This is a really difficult question. I know I'm really putting you on the spot here, but if we bring everybody up to this same incredibly high bar now, how is that going to work? I just can't see a world where there aren't winners and losers. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Of course there will be, right, Neil? And this is exactly why we have to hyper personalize it. That is exactly where the human cognition piece, in which we extract every single person's unique attributes, unique, way of going about things. This is where it comes into play, because you don't want that vanilla. So how do we, take all the LLMs of the world, all these skills and tools that everybody is building, how do we then make it super unique to us as individuals and the way we see things and how we experienced life, since we were little, abuse and all. So with all that, in mind, then you can start building that sort of, different levels of competitiveness, where it's not all vanilla. And then in regards to, the skills and tools, we all have different interests, right? And we all think about going, solving the problems in different ways. So when you go to outfit your Gabby, you may think of it as almost like playing cards, the magic game, if you will, the playing cards game, right? Every single character has different sort of powers. One may be faster, and another one may be, more magic, and another one may have, different whatever it may be. So, in thinking about how you would build your own Gabby, what would you put together in skills and tools, Neil, as this extension of yourself? I imagine that you would probably focus more on, certain areas than others. And all the different skills that developers will be developing out there, even that in itself, those skills that they're building has nuances, very different nuances as well. So that's even going to provide an even further differentiator. Hope that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and I think I'm getting it now, that the whole kind of challenge of AGI was always going to be, where's the human part in it? And I think you've been very eloquent there, Cheryl, in terms of kind of saying, well, actually the human part is that cognition, it is that differential, it is the thing that actually makes the difference between your Gabby and my Gabby and that person's Gabby over there, is us as humans. So this is true machine-man collaboration, isn't it? In the old phrase, or man-machine collaboration, whatever the old sort of traditional phrase was. But this is it in action, isn't it? Because it's almost like the two in collaboration, you get so much more than just the sum of the parts. This new whole that we're actually developing here is really, really powerful, but very, very, to use your word, personalized. So they become extensions of us. They become us at scale, maybe. Is that kind of how you're seeing this? This gives us a chance to, once we figure this out, an ability to really go large with the opportunity here, because we can do it at scale, because that's what Gabby will enable.
Exactly. Think of the housewife at home or the house husband at home who, wants to create something simple to, maybe, I don't know, some kind of digital cookbook. They would be able to develop on their own with their own Gabby very quickly and reiterate very quickly on their own. And so they would be able to, improve their lives, even though it's not this, mass global impact, but they would be able to improve their own lives for themselves or their families if they wanted to. So, everybody's, when you say everybody's going to win, I think everyone is going to win in their own big or small way.
And that just gives, I think, everybody hope. I mean, we started this thing, I was challenging with the fear from society coming through with this stuff. And I think, you've just come full circle with this lovely reassurance that, hey, this is going to be a good outcome. And I think that human-centric approach, it just feels right, doesn't it? With this wave of tech coming at us, it's like, yeah, I know, but we can be part of this solution. I just love that analogy that you've used there. Cheryl, I know you're super busy, and I do need to obviously let you get on, but I'd love to connect people with the work that you're doing. HuroAI.com, is that the best place for people to check out your work?
Exactly. And we're starting with a very, very simple technology, which is just helping you communicate with the rest of the world right now. And as Gabby matures, we will definitely keep y'all informed. So please do get back with us and check back often to our website. We are going to mature her, over the next year or two. And hopefully within the next couple of years, people will be ready to sort of make this leap, even those housewives at home.
Wonderful. Cheryl, this has just been such an interesting conversation. I mean, I could talk this stuff for hours, but I know we need to let you go. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil, for having me. It's been exciting.